Welcome to the Wolverine podcast on that week. Yes, Michigan State at Michigan Stadium on Saturday night. And I'm John Borton. I'm here with Tom Crawford. We will be joined shortly by a real expert on the Michigan State side of things. And we'll talk all about it in one of, I would say, Michigan's nastiest rivalry. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we get into this podcast. But we welcome you in. I'm glad you're listening in. Tom Crawford, I appreciate you being here. Obviously, Tom Crawford is a correspondent with Jack Ebling, who is going to be our featured guest tonight on Press Pass on Fox 47 on Sunday nights. He is the founder of the Crawford Podcasting Network. Great to have you with us, Tom. This is Michigan State week. Tell us a little bit about what it's like where you are right now.
Well, let me just say from a personal standpoint, this is like I'm an 8-year-old kid and we're approaching Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. This is what I've been waiting for. You know, I want to open the gifts around 7:30, if you know what I mean. It's been a long couple of years in this rivalry. We got to go back to 44-10 in 2019 since we felt good about this rivalry. But there's around here specifically, there's not a lot of smack talking going on because I think it's not so much that Michigan State fans think that their team is that bad. I mean, they've been disappointed, but I think they're seeing the writing on the wall about how effective Michigan is at running the football and throwing the football in a very balanced attack. And so there's not a lot of buzz going on. I mean, there will be if they pull the upset, they'll come out of the woodwork, but it's kind of quiet around here, to be quite frankly with you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will talk much more about the Michigan State rivalry as we go through this podcast. I do want to, before I leave this topic for now, I want to ask you. I mean, you are clearly a Michigan guy. People know that. Blue Belly Tom, the whole business. And yet you have a fair amount of pretty good relationships at Michigan State. You know Tom Izzo well. You know guys up there. What is this week like for Tom Crawford?
It's I know a lot. I have a lot of former Michigan State players as friends. I have former athletic directors, multiple ones as friends. Tom Izzo is a friend. We text often. And I don't have a problem with Michigan State players and administrators and coaches. I have a problem with their fans. Okay, those are the people that drive me crazy. Fans to fans is not a good relationship in intercollegiate athletics. Players kind of more respect players. Coaches respect coach. Well, some of them maybe. Some coaches, we learned this, maybe not respect each other, as we saw in Jim Harbaugh's press conference on Monday. But I it's a different level. But it's for me, it's personal. My wife graduated Michigan State. I graduated from Michigan, so we've had that mixed marriage, if you will, from the start. And my daughter Kelsey graduated from Michigan State. I got Michigan State friends all over the place from high school days and beyond. Green is all around me, but I navigate it as best I can.
Yes, and I can vouch for this, you don't secretly hope that the Spartans either keep it close or pull one out on Saturday. You're about as far as it gets from that.
No, I mean, this game of any athletic event that I watch or emotionally attach myself with over the course of every year, this exceeds Michigan Ohio State. This is the most important athletic event for me personally that takes place. I mean, Michigan State basketball would be second and third, those home and away games. Michigan football versus Michigan State. This is it. This is the number uno for me.
All right, a big one. We're going to take a real quick peek back right now to Penn State, and only because we looked at that, before in the bye week, but this time around, it's because Jim Harbaugh was asked about Coach Franklin's judgment regarding the Michigan tunnel at halftime and how practices there might need to be changed somewhat. And Jim Harbaugh, I want to quote the response. I'm sure most people listening in have heard it. I'm sure they won't mind hearing it again, because you rarely see this kind of coach to coach sort of bluntness. Jim Harbaugh said, "I've really got bigger fish to fry than Coach Franklin's opinion on the halftime tunnel from a game ago. All they've got to do is walk into their locker room. I think you saw pretty clearly that they completely stopped. They weren't letting us get up the tunnel. It just seemed like such a sophomoric ploy to keep us out of our locker room, and he looked like he was the ringleader of the whole thing. But no, I've got bigger fish to fry than to worry about that kind of whining." So what I gathered from that is you probably will not see any exchange of Christmas cards between James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh this Christmas season.
You think, JP? I mean, my word. And he makes this, overreaction, if you will, that you can't have a single tunnel in intercollegiate football. Okay, they got one at Michigan State. There's never issues in the tunnel. That there's never been really an issue. Well, I take that back. The 2013 Michigan-Ohio State game that Michigan lost 42-41. A great game, mind you. You had that little thing, but all they did was juice everybody up. It wasn't anything bad. It was just smack talking. It wasn't. That's just the way it should be. There's either that or out on the field. Michigan and Ohio State have had spit spats in the center of the field. Ohio State tore down Michigan's banner in 1973 that I witnessed. That's just part of the game. But I'm with Harbaugh on this one. I thought the way they navigate that is they hold Michigan back, and the opposing team has they're right there. They could just walk out, but they sauntered a little slower and then the smack talking starting. I think Penn State got full of themselves because they're getting their butts kicked statistically, but they're only 2 points down, and so they felt a little sassy about it. And look what happened in the second half.
Yeah, and somebody might have wanted chicken salad rather than peanut butter sandwiches. So
yeah, exactly.
So a couple of them might have fumbled their sandwiches and caused a delay in the tunnel. But it was I just thought it was really interesting from the standpoint of we rarely get that kind of coach to coach bluntness. We know it goes on. But not often are you going to hear that kind of an answer from Jim Harbaugh on something that direct. And I think it shows, a little bit of James Franklin trying to change the subject from the fact that his team got his butt collectively kicked.
Well, he came up with excuses after that game. We don't have we don't have Aaron Donalds on this team. Remember that stuff,
right?
In the immediate post game. This time, the only time I recall Harbaugh really getting a spit spat with the other coach was the Devin Bush thing. I think it was that 2018 on the Monday presser. He talked about about the whole protocol about walking the field, and we have the field. That's the only other time that I've seen Harbaugh step out in that. And to be honest with you, I like that. I like what he said on Monday. It wasn't over the top, but he was standing firm on his opinion of it. And hey, look forward to the Michigan and Penn State game next year, huh?
Absolutely, and it shows that he's feeling pretty good about this team. He's 7-0.
Amen.
He's got that little edge. He's gonna mix it up a little bit. It's like, bring it, okay? I can chop it up and then throw that little backhander in. I've got bigger fish to fry, and that would be Michigan State. Hey, other big news from the press conference on Monday. Not really a shocker to those who have been following this closely, but Harbaugh did confirm that captain tight end Eric All is done for the year. He tweeted out that he had back surgery. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a crusher. This young man has had an incredible life of challenges. I mean, he almost died when his house burned down as an infant. We heard that story, rescued by a fireman. But I feel bad for. I mean, this guy's a talented athlete. I have no idea how this is going to play out with any remaining college participation at Michigan or the NFL. But I do know this: I really enjoyed talking with him. I got lucky and got some one-on-one moments with him at Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis, and just by luck and just an engaging young man. And one thing that stood out for me with him and Mozzie Smith, in particular, with the Michigan representation, was that they're looking so much forward to this Michigan State game. I mean, it was a high priority game, and I never ever at Big Ten Media Days heard Michigan refer to Michigan State. This ties into the topic of the day, and Eric All was the first to bring it up. It wasn't a media person baiting him with a question. He brought it up about priorities. We got to beat Michigan State. We got to beat Michigan State, and there was no bones about it. So I mean, that adds to. I mean, it gives you a real pulse on how much this game means to him, even as a non-participant and the entire team.
No doubt. They were setting a tone there early at media days, and they really haven't backed away from that. They said their goals was win both of these major rivalry games. They took care of Ohio State last year. They want to do it again, but Michigan State has certainly been an emphasis. One more question I'd say before we get into more of the Michigan State talk. I just want to know, in your mind, we're 7 games in, and as you look, we kind of had our ideas about what position groups for Michigan might be strong early in the year and see how that goes. In your mind, if you were to pick the top 3 position groups to this point in the season for Michigan going into this Michigan State game, what would they be and why?
Oh, that's a great question, and they're hard to select from. Two in particular, but I'm gonna go old school here, and I'm gonna go with the offensive line. Because I really did not anticipate them improving over last year. And last year was an award-winning offensive line, and they had obviously some turnover and even and Trente Jones. They've had a couple injuries in there, but I think they're amazing, and so that stands out number one. I'm going to go flip. I'm going to also go trenches, and I'm going to go the D line. The D line also has been just mesmerizing me. Like, how did you get so good
Yeah.
on the interior? And I have been incredibly impressed with the D line, and I think they're going to have a big day, a big impact on the outcome of this game on Saturday night. And then how can I not how can I not go to the running back slot, especially when we got 2 of them, mind you, and Blake Corn, Donovan Edwards. That's a killer combination. What a tandem that's going to be. I mean, Blake making all those carries, all those yards early on. Now Donovan joining in the mix, and the breakaway, huge chunk plays that they had against Penn State. So those would be my top 3, but there's a lot of other areas as well.
Oh, there's no question about it. I want to make 2 comments about what you had to say, and I agree pretty much right down the line with the position groups you picked. If you have any team where you can say the top 2 position groups are the offensive line and the defensive line right off the bat, you probably have a pretty good team.
Yeah, funny how that works.
That is a great place to start. And then, how do you argue with the running backs, especially coming off that Penn State game? At the same time, these defensive backs are better, I think, than we expected because of the personnel losses. You say, okay, how's this all going to come around? That secondary is pretty darn good, and I think will play a major role on Saturday. And then you've got, the top guy in the country as far as completing passes from under center and from the shotgun in J.J. McCarthy. That he's been pretty decent himself. So position group wise, you lost Cade McNamara, and he has not been back. So it has pretty much been a one-man show, but it's been a pretty good show. So. Yeah. Some nice honorable mentions there, I do believe.
Well, the Mike Sanders still going from wide receiver to corner. I mean, are you kidding me? I didn't imagine that this would be such a smooth transition and what he's done in that secondary and you know, you can Jamon Green. I mean, you could go out, you can pick all these guys and you know, you can go down one by one and say, you know, wow, think of what he's contributed. I like what Harbaugh talked about that defense on Monday because it's stuck in my mind. It goes back to this to the both teams of the late 60s and 70s is the fact there's so many defenders getting to the ball. I've never seen that before in a long, long time. It goes back to the 69 team, Bo's first team, where you had 5 guys at the ball. And that's what this Michigan defense is doing right now.
Yeah. The one, I guess, the surprise unit that wouldn't be in those top 3, given what we were kind of thinking before the season started, what'd we say? Wide receivers, absolutely loaded. Absolutely loaded. And I'm thinking maybe the fact that they're not in those top 3 groups so far has been as much a function of they haven't had to rely heavily on the passing game yet.
Mm-hmm.
You may start to see that this weekend because of if Michigan has taken a look at Michigan State secondary and knows, okay, we can attack here. You may see that start to pick up. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as unbalanced as it was in the Penn State game between run and pass.
No, you're not going to get a $145 in the air and you know 418. You're not going to run that much on the Michigan State deal. I love it to happen, and I hope I'm wrong. But that, I mean, Michigan State's going to load up the front. Michigan State's really good at defending the run traditionally against Michigan. And but you're right. I mean that those wideouts and led by Ronnie Bell is, you know, that's you're gonna see an emergence because of what, because Michigan has been reacting offensively to what the defense gives them, right? And I think you're going to see more teams trying to stop Michigan. I mean, Illinois is going to do that. I mean, I think Michigan is going to have a incredibly balanced attack to beat Illinois on the second to last regular season game of the season.
Absolutely. All right. Do we have our guest on hand? There he is. How about that? Jack Ebling is a 3-time State of Michigan Sports Writer of the Year, member of the Greater Lansing Sports Hall of Fame, writer and broadcaster in Mid-Michigan since 1978, author of 8 books, including The Perfect 10, which centered on the final 10 seconds of the Michigan MSU game of 2015. Jack, otherwise known as to Michigan fans as 10 Seconds in Hell. But nevertheless, that was the big moment that they keep replaying. And I appreciate you joining us on a very special week in the state of Michigan.
John, I just lost the audio. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I can't hear you. I could hear you up until about 30 seconds ago, and now I've lost the audio here.
Oh, there.
So I didn't touch the computer. I don't know whether I need to call back in.
Can you hear me now?
I cannot hear you.
Okay, maybe have him dial back. Maybe have him dial
I can
back.
read Tom's lips. I've had a lot of practice doing that over the years. I'm going to kill out of this and try to sign back in.
That sounds good.
That sounds great.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got Jack introduced. Now we'll get him so that he can converse with us, because
that Perfect 10 book, you know, I mean, that brain, the light bulb went on when he was riding with me out of Ann Arbor and seeing the misery I was going through as quote unquote fan media after the disastrous ending of that game, which was by far the worst ending to an athletic event that I was emotionally attached to. The most traumatic that I was attached to. Okay.
No doubt about it.
I will not hesitate in putting that in the number 1 slot. And I hope it never happens again. And I mean, you could have Michigan win 6 or 7 35-0 games in a row, and State fans will never forget you, or get you to forget that.
Yes. I believe it was John Wangler who once famously said they'll get more mileage out of 1 win than Michigan will get out of 10. But I don't know if that's the case anymore. The D'Antonio years sort of got them all too accustomed to winning in this series. And that's why I think that there's a great emphasis from Jim Harbaugh on down to rectifying that sort of turn in the series that they would like to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, at the presser on Monday, authoritatively, Jim Harbaugh said, I want this. I want to win this game. I mean, you've seen him since 2015 in front of you. I mean, didn't you feel that there was a different approach to this? It wasn't a snarky, don't bother me with questions, tight kind of, it was a loose, animated, engaging, yet respectful of the opponent version of Jim Harbaugh.
No question.
I like Jim Harbaugh since 2021 early on. It's been a good version of Jim Harbaugh. I like these last 2 years.
Yeah, well, everybody likes.
Let's cape them for a while.
Everybody likes these last 2 years because what you've got is Jim Harbaugh, who has rediscovered his mojo. Whatever, I mean, he came in with the swagger and the cockiness and the taking on other coaches, whether they be SEC coaches, and they were having the back and forth about camps and all that kind of thing. And I think he's got some of that back. You know, winning the Big Ten title and taking down Ohio State will do that for you. And,
John, I think he made some great hires. Clinksdale. Yeah. I mean, we could go on Mike Hart. I mean, Jesse Minter, that's worked out. Sharon Moore, what's happened at the O-line and the co-coordinator thing has worked out. And from what I'm understanding about the dynamics in the rooms and everything like that, it's a different kind of Schembechler Hall now than it was 2020 prior to 2015. There's a difference from what I've learned in Jim Harbaugh, and it shows. Yeah. You can improve. Dave Wanstead talked about on Big Ten Network. You know, you can make changes even late in your coaching career. You can improve your game just like players improve their game. They learn more. But I think letting coaches coach, and that's what he's doing on this staff, that's been the secret sauce for Jim Harbaugh.
I also think that just the culture of Michigan football has changed over that same period. I think they have, I honestly think they have fewer me guys and
that's
fewer.
True. That's a good point.
Fewer guys that are looking towards the NFL first. I just think that this is, Jim Harbaugh has talked about the culture and talked about the sort of the feeling among teammates on these last couple of teams. And I see a definite difference.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. Now, how that, this back half of the schedule, we got 5 games to go, and there's plenty of potholes, even including that game up in Piscataway against Rutgers after this emotional Michigan State game, prior to the Nebraska and Illinois home bouts we have there before Ohio State. That's another one of those flare gun. You know what I mean? Those are red flag games you got to watch out for. So we're gonna constantly be evaluating Jim Harbaugh, how he handles this team going down the stretch, because coaching's a big part of the final output in my mind.
No question. Hopefully we can get Jack Ebling back in with
where
us.
Did he go?
We're still trying to connect there so that everybody can hear everybody else. But first topic, as far as U of M MSU, let me just throw this at you first. I'm going to ask Jack when we get him in, and but I want to just toss this one your way. Both of you guys, who I know work together and have for a long time, are steeped in Michigan football history and in Michigan State history. When you take a look back over the course of this series, what are the things that come to your mind?
Well, I mean, the dynamic has changed in terms of fans' perception. Since Mark D'Antonio arrived in East Lansing in that 2008. Well, obviously the little spit spat with Mike Hart, and then Michigan State winning 10 of the last 14. That's gotten Michigan fans' attention, and they used to look down on Michigan State. And I use my fraternity brothers and Michigan friends as a benchmark on their attitudes toward Michigan State. Who cares about Michigan State? Then all of a sudden, I don't like Michigan State, and now all of a sudden they're kind of obsessed with Michigan State in terms of this game. That like we got to win this game because they're tired of what's happened and they're losing these last two games when Michigan State had the inferior talent, if you will, and the way they last year's game, how that played out, some controversy laced in there. Michigan ends up winning the Big Ten championship, beats Ohio State, but they still had that loss from Michigan State. That adds up. I've never seen a Michigan game, as far as Michigan fans are concerned, more important than this year in a long time, long time. And also they don't just want to win the game. 80% of them want a beat down. That's part of their vision, their fantasy. They want that bad because they're feeling all this frustration for the last few years.
And one of the themes on Monday, you brought several players in after Harbaugh talked on Monday. And one of the things that they all talked about, it seemed like, was the bus ride home from East Lansing last year. And it was not a fun one. It was very quiet. It was very somber. You had an angry, shocked in some ways team that knew it had a significant lead on Michigan State in its own building and let that slip through their fingers. I think that is a real motivator for this year. I think it's enough of a motivator that Michigan players will be able to completely ignore, completely shut out the struggles that Michigan State has had so far this year.
Yeah, I think that, when you hear Harbaugh talk about how many times they've looked at that film, the players looked at that film. When he immediately started talking about Michigan State after the Penn State win in the tunnel, Blake Corum with Harbaugh. Yeah, they took that one to heart. And I really think that they will be ready to play. It's almost like my fear of, I'm a worrywart when it comes to this game for justifiable reasons, because crazy stuff has happened, that they don't overthink this and get too cute. I mean, I think Michigan can win this game by running the football and just moving the sticks, time of possession like they beat Penn State, try to get that advantage, and then incorporate the aerial game when need be, and they're going to probably need it more than they did against Penn State and other teams. I almost envision that the offensive line will wear down Michigan State's defense, much like or very similar to what Michigan did on both sides of the ball, actually, against Indiana. I mean, actually, even more so on the flip side. I thought Indiana went up tempo so much and they wore themselves out that Michigan's D line had a field day against Indiana. They had the 7 sacks, 7 different players, 7 sacks. I think they wore them down. So I think both trenches are going to wear the other trench down, and maybe even more so the defense wearing down Michigan State's offense, because I think State's going to go up tempo in this game. And if Michigan can hold serve and get the time of possession back, they should be in pretty good shape. Just don't turn the ball over, because if Michigan's put the ball on the ground a few times, John, but they've been recovering those.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, don't lose those. I mean, they're +3 in turnovers. Michigan State's even Steven, but don't put the ball on the turf thinking you're going to recover it like they have, fortunately, in these past 7 games.
You were talking a little nuts and bolts there. Do you see Michigan going to the pass earlier than maybe they even did against Indiana? That was kind of a gradual thing. They were the way the coaches used to characterize it is tenderizing the opponent. That run game, and you loosen them up a little bit, and then you go to the throw. In this particular game, given the issues that Michigan State has had with its secondary, does Michigan come out firing right off the bat, or do they beat them up a little up front first?
I think they're going to try to strike balance, because I think physicality in this game, I think Michigan wants to make a statement that we're here, okay? That we're going to be physical and not go Bo Schembechler, where out of the 70 snaps you're running it 99% of the time. But what I'm saying is, I think they're gonna. It's not gonna be all pass. I think they're gonna. I think maybe they're, if they get into a 3rd and 4 situation, they'll be throwing the ball in situations like that. And so I think run first, and then they'll run the play action off that. I'm just guessing. I can't imagine Michigan getting away from the running game, coming off with how effective they were against Penn State. So why switch up that winning formula? At least give it a go against Michigan State and see how it plays out.
Understood. That said, it would be kind of fun to see a drawn-up Michigan State defense looking to stack the run on the first play and bury Blake Corum and get an emotional first defensive stop. And you go play action, you unload one to Andrell Anthony over the top of everybody, and it goes for 75 yards and a touchdown.
Or 93 yards. Like, I mean, Michigan goes back up and then run that drag pattern, that crosser, and he's off to the races. The first catch he makes. I mean, and I think Andrell's going to, it sounds like to me he's going to get more of a role in here. And so, yeah, I think balance. I think balance is what's really going to be the thing that brings Michigan State down, because I don't think they can defend. And also a balance. I think Michigan State is going to have to strike a balance a little bit more. They can't all throw against Michigan and expect to win this game. They're going to have to get a running game going. They have effectively gotten a running game going against Michigan in the past. I think it's going to be exceedingly challenging this
year. Yeah. Here is an attitudinal question, because it always surrounds this game. There is an edge to how this game is played. There seem to be more personal fouls, a little more on the sidelines, a little more under the piles. If you talk to guys that have played in this game, guys like Steve Everett have some wonderful descriptions about what goes on at the bottom of the pile in this game. I characterize it as the nastiest rivalry that Michigan takes part in. You have Ohio State, and you've always heard, well, that's a hard-hitting rivalry, and this is the two biggest rivals in the Big Ten. They respect each other and all. I think some of that went out the window with some of the shenanigans in recent years, the Jim Tressel stuff. But also, Michigan State just seems to have more of an edge, just seems nastier. Agree or disagree?
I agree totally, and I've talked to a lot of former players, and I'll never forget a conversation I had with Jared Bunch, former fullback at Michigan. He talked comparing the Michigan-Ohio State game. This was in a radio interview, and said you'd never want to hang around the pile, if you will, against Michigan State, because it's chippy, and then being under the pile is another thing. He pretty much stated, and he's an Ohio guy, if I'm not mistaken, that the Ohio State game was much cleaner and almost more respectful than Michigan State. I mean, Michigan State and Michigan, I mean, you go back, I mean, I can countless games that it's been chippy. I'll never forget the 92 game, Michigan won 35-10. That got really chippy down the stretch. And other games as well. So, yeah, Michigan State it's a bad rivalry, as Ballas says. It's true.
Well, I mean, the Michigan State people point all the way back to Michigan looking to keep Michigan State out of the Big Ten as at the very beginning of things. And then you've always had that.
The vote. How about the vote? The Rose Bowl vote following the 1973 season, and Michigan's AD voted against Michigan. And so it's like, is this a payback for Michigan not wanting Michigan State to get in the Big Ten? So it's been going back and forth for a lot. But I say that, but there's still a lot of respect from administrators at the University of Michigan and coaches and at Michigan State, and so it's not totally that way.
Yeah, understood. But I just, we both talked to enough players that on that field, it can get very, very chippy, and I think it goes one of two ways. If Michigan gets out to a bigger lead, I think it tends to boil over in frustration where Michigan State is more likely to pick up a personal foul penalty or that late sideline hit, that sort of thing.
Jacob Panashuk in 2019. I mean, in 2019, in that 44-10 loss, I saw Michigan State. Well, there were a lot of personal fouls in it. I mean, they just lost their composure, and you don't see that often from that team, but it certainly happened in that game. That was just raw emotion.
Yes or no? Good development that Michigan State actually knocked off Wisconsin in double overtime, or not? Because I contend that that's not the worst thing that ever happened. I know Michigan fans want to see Michigan State lose every game, or at least some of them do. But in this situation, you had a team spiraling down that lost 4 in a row, and they beat Wisconsin. Maybe that just is enough of a reminder to this Michigan team that, hey, they can still come up and get some people.
Well, I think that point, that game had more for Michigan State than it did for Michigan, because I think that if Michigan State had lost to Wisconsin, I'm not saying they would have checked out, but they would not have had. I mean, their daubers would have been down too significantly, I think, and this game would be very difficult with a bye week and all the lingering and all the fans, second guessing them. I think they got some mojo back with that win. That was a quality win. Wisconsin went and beat down on Purdue the next week. But you're right. It reminded Michigan, look, we can't take Michigan State for granted. Granted, we like to beat them down when they're down. Maybe this team is not that bad as we first thought.
All right. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on this. Do we have Jack available?
Looks like we see him in studio. I think I see him on the on my screen in terms of there. Can Matthew bring him in or not?
I am not seeing him.
Not seeing him here.
Entered into the visual portion of this podcast. All right. Well, we're gonna keep on plowing here.
Still having issues. Yeah.
Still having issues. That is. We will definitely get with Jack Ebling another time if he's not able to get in here.
Those turnovers, man, they get you every time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, blunt question: does Michigan State stand a chance in this game?
Oh, I mean, every team in the Big Ten East has. Well, maybe not Rutgers or Indiana, but I mean, they have a chance if Michigan helps them. If I think it sounds like we'll look at the weather, which I hit refresh every 7 minutes. After that 2017 game, I want a dry field. Yeah, they have a chance. And they have a chance because of Jaden Reed. He's the Kenneth Walker of this team. I mean, he's not the Kenneth Walker, but he's the one guy that Michigan has got to keep their eye on. He's a jump ball guy, as Harbaugh alluded to. He's a big play guy. He's an NFL guy. And when you have him and you got Keon Coleman, another good wideout who's got a lot of the basketball player we know of, Daniel Barker, a tight end, and with Peyton Thorne, it's on again, off again. I mean, this is just like last year. Look at the Michigan game of last year. Peyton Thorne was off in the first half. All of a sudden, he gets in the groove in the second half. Okay, so it's an erratic quarterback. It's a quarterback that if he gets in the groove, he can drop it in the trash can from 40 yards out. So yeah, I mean that it's possible. I think it's unlikely that Michigan State's going to win. Highly unlikely, but it's likely that it could be, or maybe not likely, but there's a possibility that could be a fourth quarter game. Okay, with could be a 20-10 game. I have a 20-10 game in the fourth quarter. I have Michigan winning this game 27-10.
27-10.
27-10. Yep. And people think 27-10. That's not even the spread. But I think Michigan State's going to play well, but not good enough.
Yeah, that kind of game.
Yeah.
Emotional game. I think Michigan is going to pull away in this game if it does not make the big mistake early, if it scores early, if it gets rolling with some confidence and shows it's going to move the ball without turning it over, like you said. And my margin, which will be revealed later this week in our own staff picks on the Wolverine website. But I think I go with a little bit bigger spread than you, but it depends almost entirely on how the early going of this game is, because you get that turnover in Michigan territory. You get that big mistake, and Michigan State scores, and all of a sudden, it's rolling with little confidence. That could change things in a big hurry.
Well, if and Michigan starts thinking about things, one thing, the X factor in this game, uh, and I'm not a big fan of night games, but I love the fact that this is a night game. I hear I say that sounds, contradictive, but I think that crowd's going to be a big issue for a couple reasons. Right? Just because of the blue out and they're going to have a light show at Mr. Brightside the third quarter. That third quarter, sing along thing they always do, and the weather conditions are going to be great. You got the fever pitch going, building on towards that. These fans want this game. Michigan fans want this game, and the other element is you're not going to be getting, in my prediction, as much Michigan State fan representation in that in the corner on in the southwest corner that you do, or way up there in the in the southeast corner up high. It's not going to be like it normally is, because I think there's a lot of Michigan State fans that don't have quite the hunger to somehow get in that stadium because we got a chance to win. Because I think the lion's share of Michigan State fans think they have no chance of winning if you had them, be totally candid with
you. Yep, no doubt about it. Understood. So all of that being said, if Michigan happens to win big in this game, does the noise surrounding one Mel Tucker increase? He's been talked about as the coach that signed the $95 million contract, and a lot of people say it was based on 2 wins, both of them over the University of Michigan. What happens if Michigan takes care of business in this game with regard to Coach Tucker?
Well, it depends on how the rest of the season goes for Michigan State. I mean, they have some great opportunities to bounce. I mean, they got to go down to Champaign the following week to play Illinois, which will be that's going from Michigan's defense to Illinois' defense. If they bounce back and get a win there, I mean, and they got Indiana and Rutgers. They'll get those 2 games. They get to a bowl game. They compete well against Penn State, and if they win the bowl game, maybe go 7-6. The noise won't be that negative because there's basketball too. So Michigan State fans will gravitate towards that, and their women's soccer team just won a Big Ten title. So they'll be all about women's soccer because that's what Michigan State does. When they find a sport they win at, that's all you hear about. That coach will have his own show here before the end of it. Tongue in cheek. But I'm just saying that I don't. If Michigan State wins, gets bowl eligible, there won't be any noise. But if this thing goes in the tank, say they win maybe 1 more game or even 2 more games, say they go 4-8, yeah, the $95 million contract. And I mean, it's like, wow, what is this what we're getting? The naysayers, and then the declarations of they need to fire that offensive coordinator, they need to fire that defensive coordinator. That always comes out. That's the chic thing to do. Mm-hmm. And you'll hear a lot of that noise.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have given us a score: Michigan 27, Michigan State 10. Tell me how you perceive them to get to those numbers. Will this be a game well into the second half, even if it turns out the way you're saying, with a 17-point spread?
I don't, I'm not, and I'm a lousy score predictor, to be quite honest with you. And maybe I'm trying to guard myself against not getting overly enthused about, and predicting a 45-3 or something like that, which I would love if it was a big score in this game. And then I love it to happen again and again and again. Okay. And maybe then I'll feel better about this situation since 2008. But I just think that, it's going to be some, maybe a 20-3 at halftime. They score to make it 20-10, and then Michigan scores to make it 27-10, and then Michigan just just plays it out. I don't know. I for some reason I have this 27-10 up there. I really didn't really pound the nail on how to figure out how it was going to get to that point.
Right.
But I think I think Michigan could be vulnerable to a turnover or two, which slows down the having the margin grow quickly.
Sure.
I
Understood.
hope I'm wrong. I want a clean game, and I want penalty free.
Yeah.
Not like Indiana game. That was not good.
I have seen very few penalty-free Michigan State games.
No.
So I'm not banking heavily on that, but I am going to, certainly agree with you about the level of ferocity in this game, the passion, just everything that goes into it. You're going to see that on display on Saturday night. You are going to see I think a really, really whipped up Michigan crowd.
I do too.
They are not going to care that that Michigan State has had its troubles. They're going to smell blood. They're going to say, "Okay, this needs to be just the Penn State Part 2 in a different way."
I agree, John. They're going to take the Steve Spurrier mentality. If it's 21, how do we get it to 28? Let's get it to 35. Let's get it to 42. That crowd, I'm not saying it's going to be at Ohio State level, but it's going to be close. Because you look at those Saturday night crowds that they've had at Michigan State, the Notre Dame games, there's been like 3 of them. That Washington game against a Husky team that wasn't even that good, I couldn't believe how a fever pitch that crowd was. So maybe not the Hawaii game for obvious reasons, but when you look at the past night crowds, other than the monsoon that I want to bring up in 2017, it's been a good fit to have Michigan play night football at the corner of the stadium in May.
No question. And you're going to see it this Saturday night, Michigan versus Michigan State. And one team that is undefeated and hoping to roll into Columbus at the end of the season, still undefeated. And one team that's had some major, major struggles. We'll see how this all plays out. Tom Crawford, fantastic job as always. Thank you for joining us. And we will talk about this game and more come next week.
Look forward to it. There'll be a lot to cover, I'll tell you, a week from today.